Welcome to Red Dwarf AMP, the Thursday Night Angry Marks podcast, where normally we talk about Red Dwarf, and occasionally we talk about pro wrestling. My name is Stevie J, and I have two fine co-hosts with me tonight, who hopefully did not have their memories of the last 4 days erased, starting with the great Sudoku, Jason Harland.
No, sadly, I can still remember the GCW show. I wish I could erase that from my mind.
I think the only thing wrong with that was they ran long and had to cut everything short at the end, but our other co-hosts...
The only thing really wrong with it was the Matt Cardona versus Joey Janela match. Everything else I did not have a problem with, except for the shortened main event, but even that wasn't as bad as Joey Janela and Matt Cardona.
All right, fair enough, but I said we're going to talk about Red Dwarf and not pro wrestling, so I'll throw it to Jonathan Courtwright.
Welcome, Housen. I'm doing good, folks.
You smegheads are just insisting on making this about pro wrestling tonight, aren't you?
No, I just had to give you shit.
All right.
I like Danhausen being in AEW. I always sit on AEW, but I like Danhausen being there. I am going to be positive about that.
And besides, he could be in Red Dwarf. We don't know.
That would be awesome.
Well, speaking of being positive, that's what this episode was all about, was Lister trying to make Rimmer be more positive by giving him something he's never had before. It was called Thanks for the Memory. Jason, why don't you take us away?
Okay, yeah, so we start off, and the crew are partying on a planet with a breathable atmosphere, though the planet itself looks more like a barren moon that just happens to have a breathable atmosphere because it's just rock and nothing else, and Holly is headbanging on a portable monitor, and Rimmer is quite drunk, despite him saying that he isn't. It's like, this isn't affecting me in the slightest.
No, he says this isn't afflicting me, which is how you know how drunk he is.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, he says this isn't afflicting me at the least, and then you hear the laugh track, and it's like, I don't mind a laugh track when the joke is funny, because him not knowing what he said was funny.
Yeah, then why are you dancing then? You call that dancing? I think you're on fire move better than that.
And the reason they're having this party is it's the anniversary of the day Arnold Rimmer died.
They're celebrating Rimmer's death day.
Which in some other ways I could see that happening, but it's like, he's right there, guys. He's not dead. He's just a change of pace.
He can now work for Groovy Channel 26.
And they have a cake in the shape of what we would call a wrench, but what the Brits call a spanner, because Rimmer was second technician, and I guess occasionally he would use one of those.
Holly gets in a rather racy joke at this point about Arnold getting a cake in the shape of a spanner, and he's like, oh, Gordon Bennett, it's a good thing he wasn't a gynecologist.
Second time the Gordon Bennett line has come up. It's a very British expression we don't use much over here.
Nor do we use core blimey, but every time Holly uses it, I'm reminded that I should use it more often.
Oh, I use it as much as I can, other than, smeghead or bollocks.
So everybody gets good and drunk, and they're all singing Show Me the Way to Go Home, but they're singing it about Rimmer's death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago to celebrate Rimmer's death. So they're celebrating Rimmer's death, and they're kind of swerving their way in Starbug back to Red Dwarf.
Actually, that's not Starbug.
It's Blue Midget, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, I think so. Not trying to be, detailish,
but they were very, very inebriated. Whatever craft it was, they were not operating it very proficiently.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, how are you going to get back on the Dwarf like that?
So anyway, piloting skills aside, they do manage to get back safely somehow. At which point, Rimmer is apparently just completely smashed because he can't even read the time on the clock. He's like, there's a bunch of numbers, but they could mean anything. And Lister has apparently decided the best cure for a hangover is to never stop drinking because he's got a pint in hand and he's doing a jigsaw puzzle.
But of course, he had to. He was drunk, as Vivian said. Do you know what I fancy right now? A big fat woman with thighs the size of a hippo's. No, I want a triple fried egg sandwich with chili sauce and chutney. And before I went vegan, I actually made that once or twice. Chutney doesn't matter, but I will highly recommend Cholula garlic chili sauce for the chili sauce on a triple fried egg sandwich with chili sauce and chutney.
Cholula is good on anything, and a fried egg in a sandwich is never wrong.
You need 3 of them for a triple fried egg sandwich.
Yes. And Rimmer, Chris Berry, specifically the actor here, playing Rimmer, he makes the best facial expressions while he's eating this sandwich that Holly has prepared for him, you know.
Oh, and there's the verbal things he says too, like, it feels like I'm having a baby.
I believe Lister at one point describes the sandwich as proper naughty, and I think that's the best 2 words.
Says it's like a cross between food and bowel surgery.
But I just love how his eyes tell the whole story. At first, he's eating it and he's like, it's okay, not bad. And then he gets bug-eyed, like he feels like his mouth is on fire. And then he kind of like, oh.
He enjoys it. You can see he's clearly enjoying it after he gets over the shock of what it tastes like. He's like, his expression is like, this is actually quite good. I'm enjoying this.
When people use the term giving facial, what Chris Berry was doing at this point in the show was very much giving facial.
And Lister kind of gives away the kind of bread that is needed because he talks about you have to eat it before the bread dissolves, which would kind of imply that it's very cheap, just, like white Wonder Bread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bottom barrel generic bread, which for a sandwich like that is only appropriate.
It would be, though, again, if you make this, I would highly recommend toasting the bread first.
Yeah, it didn't look toasted in the episode, but that would probably give it a little more structure.
Yes, structural integrity will hold better if you toast it first.
It definitely does when you make a Dagwood. And when I'm watching Doctor Who or Red Dwarf, I often make a Dagwood sandwich, and I always toast the bread.
And Rimmer is just shit-faced. I could never invent a sandwich like this. The ingredients are all wrong. The fried eggs, they're wrong. The chutney, it's wrong. The chili sauce, it's all wrong. But you put them together and it works. It becomes right. This sandwich is you, Lister.
It's what?
And he goes, it's something that a drunk person would say, but he's saying that, all of his ingredients are wrong, that Lister lacks discipline, that he's the only person ever to get his money back from the odor eater people. But people like him, and he doesn't understand why.
And then he says, me, on the other hand, I've got everything. I've got a career. I'm dedicated. I always have a pen. And yet people can't stand me.
Because you never have time for people, Rimmer.
But I was always sucking up to that toady Captain Hollister and that idiot, who's the other guy he talks about?
Todd Hunter.
Yeah, Todd Hunter.
Todd Hunter and the Captain. And this came out, in 89?
Mm-hmm.
And he used the word simping, which is something that has come back into fashion just recently.
Well, I think it came back into fashion when 3-6 Mafia said, I'm not a wimp or a simp in a song.
Yes, Mr. Fat Bastard 2044. I went out of my way to simp around him. Good old Captain Hollister. What a fat bastard. And then Rimmer goes on to ask Lister if he knows how many times in his entire life that he, meaning Rimmer, has made love.
And of course, Dave, being the reasonable, sensible person he is, despite being drunk, is like, you don't want to tell me this. You're going to hate yourself in the morning, and you're going to bite your hand and scream in pain.
I kind of think it's especially from being drunk. He's like, I don't want to know. Don't tell me.
And then, of course,
he's afraid he's going to vomit all over the place if Rimmer tells him. But yeah, Rimmer ends up telling him, and Rimmer does hate himself in the morning, but he tells him that it was Yvonne Magruder and that it was one time, a single brief liaison with the ship's female boxing captain.
From 7:31 to 7:43. 12 minutes, including the time it took to eat the pizza.
I have spent more time in my entire life being sick.
The funny thing is he says this like it's some grand revelation, but we already knew from Better Than Life that Yvonne Magruder was the only woman he'd ever had.
We know this, and I mean, to put it bluntly, this is not one of my favorite episodes. This is one of the weaker episodes, in my opinion, of Red Dwarf. It has some funny things that are non sequiturs, but I like the the narrative structure of the episode better than the actual narrative itself.
See, what I like about it, if we're going on a segue here, is this is another one of those episodes where Lister genuinely feels bad for Rimmer, even though he's a complete smeghead and makes his life miserable. Lister was genuinely trying to do something good for him, which we're going to get to.
Yep.
Yes, we get the triple fried egg chutney sandwich out of this, and we get the whole hello to you speech out of this. But other than that, this episode is kind of a wash for me.
To me, it still holds up, but to each their own. Let's go on.
So we have Rimmer just kind of pouring his heart out that, he only made love once with Magruder for 12 minutes in the time that it took to be a pizza. And Lister's like, Smeg, I didn't want to hear that. And says, that Rimmer, you just haven't met the right girl. And Rimmer has a great line. It's like, no, I haven't. And, given the fact that the human race no longer exists, coupled with the fact that I'm dead, some might just say it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and Lister says, well, you chose your career over your personal life, which is dead on the money for Rimmer.
What was that, Jonathan?
Said you had to feel sorry for Rimmer, even for just like 5 seconds.
5 microseconds.
As I said, Lister makes a good point when he says he chose his career over his personal life, because that's Rimmer literally says, up the ziggurat, lickety split. That's Rimmer.
But at the same time, as we learned from the death of Arnold Rimmer's father, how could he have turned out any other way than he did with parents like that?
Which we'll find out later, yes. But from where I started, nothing is up.
They wake up the next morning and Rimmer has a flashback to all the things he said in his drunken stupor.
Yeah, well, he's like doing jumping jacks and humming bar, and he's having like flashbacks, but little bits and pieces. It doesn't come all at once.
He flashes back to the actual getting drunk and them playing the music, and he's like, okay, whatever. Goes back to the exercise. Then he has another flashback. And like, no problem. And then he has a flashback to him telling Lister about Magruder, and then he stops and he's looking
and him eating his fist, afterwards.
Which is exactly what Lister predicted he would do.
Mm-hmm.
And
that Magruder gag. Fancy falling for that. Look, I'll give you my telescope. Anything. Please God, just don't tell anyone.
mm-hmm.
It reminds me of when in The Young Ones, when Rick was like, money, I'll give you money. What do you want?
Yeah, there's a very similar sense of humor there.
Just don't tell anyone.
And I think Lister's like, what? Why is my foot hurting? Why is my...
And he looks down under the sheet, and there's a giant cast.
He puts the sheet back, and he goes to hop off his bunk from the top bunk. And when he pulls the sheet back and goes to hop off, he knows he's got a cast on his foot and his leg.
Mm-hmm. And it has a bunch of signatures on it, too.
And Holly noticed that his star charts have been fiddled with, and then after that, the cat walks in, also with a cast on one leg.
And somehow, miraculously, the jigsaw puzzle that Dave didn't finish when he left is now done.
The line the cat says is great. He's like, okay, which one of you chimpanzees did this? And he points at the cast on his foot.
And of course, they're trying to figure out how this could have happened. Who finished the jigsaw puzzle? Who broke their foot? Who did all these things to the star charts? And Rimmer...
Lister says it's Sunday, and Lister goes, well, no, this clock says it's Thursday, and that clock says that it's Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And Rimmer says it's aliens. That's how aliens communicate. They communicate in alien ways.
How'd you say that? Well, they broke your foot below the knee. Below.
Hello. Breaking your foot hurts like hell. They did it below the knee. Hello. He points at him and the cat, too. They broke 2 legs. Hello, too. And jigsaw puzzle must be alien for you. Hello to you.
And the cat has some great line like, I'd hate to see what these guys are like when they're trying to write a whole speech.
Mm-hmm. I want to be around when he's making a speech.
Hey, we can.
And Lister gets the idea to find the black box, because that will have a recording of everything that has gone on in the 4 days that they've apparently blacked out on.
Mm-hmm. but the black box has been quote-unquote half-inched, which must be British slang for stealing things.
It's been nicked. Yeah, it is missing. It's been stolen or otherwise misplaced.
I need to look up the etymology of half-inched, because before Red Dwarf, I had never heard that term.
Yeah, just when I start thinking I'm familiar with a lot of British parlance, I hear something and I'm like, wait, did I just hear that right?
Maybe it's Cockney rhyming slang. Maybe half-inched rhymes with pinched.
Could be. Well, it's like watching Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I'll leave it at that. But there's a couple of scenes in there where they have to have subtitles for
For the
British
Cockney.
because of the extreme version of Cockney they have in there that even fellow Englishmen might not translate well. So,
And Holly, for a computer with an IQ of 6,000, is just about as Cockney as it gets.
yeah, no kidding. And
They locate the black box, and it was on that same moon planet they had been partying on days before.
And it's been buried underneath a tombstone that says the memory of Lisa Yates.
But before they get there, they think they see like Godzilla's footprint.
Yeah, they see a giant print in the moon dust, and they wonder how it got there.
They think there's some kind of giant beast out of there, and that's when they discover there's a tombstone that says, I guess it says to the memory of Lisa Yates. I always thought it said to the memory of Lisa Yates, but
One or the other. Probably your way, but either way, it's a tombstone to the memory.
and Lister gets this revelation, says, you're not going to believe this, but I used to go out with a girl named Lisa Yates. And they notice the black boxes in the grave, and they take it back, and Holly comes up saying, this is the black box for the Jupiter Mining Corporation ship Red Dwarf. And if it's you, Dave, or you, Arnold, don't ever play it. Something's the best left buried.
And then he pauses it, and they're like, why'd you pause it? He's like, cold blimey, listen to that dude. He knows what he's talking about.
Smart dude. He knows what he's talking about. But both Lister and Rimmer are insistent that Holly continues playing the black box recording despite his warning to not only himself, but to everyone else on the crew.
Mm-hmm. And then we find out what happened right at the moment where Dave Lister got tired of Arnold Rimmer whining and crying as he was trying to go to sleep. He left the room, left the jigsaw puzzle unfinished, and he and the cat went to a computer lab.
Well, he was whining and crying about being alone and saying that someone to watch over me song, and that's when Lister kind of takes the cat with him and takes him to the
holographic
simulation suite. That's the name of it, the holographic simulation suite. And the cat doesn't know what the room is for. He's like, this is kind of what passes for Rimmer's mind, what passes for his subconscious. This is where Rimmer's memories are stored and made.
And so Lister goes ahead and says, I'm going to go ahead and give him 8 months of my memory, so that way he'll have something to experience that he'd never experienced before.
It'll be the best present he's ever gotten.
He was probably just expecting a tie.
So he records all of his memory onto, what was it, like a CD or a floppy disk? I forget which. It was some ridiculously small storage device that no sum of an entire human memory should fit on.
And we will see that come into play in later episodes as well.
Yes, we will.
Where
but anyway,
storage media way too small for an entire human memory gets put on there. But yeah, as you said, Lister gives 8 months of his memories to Rimmer, specifically 8 months that he was with Lisa Yates.
And he does some creative editing to the memories. He replaces his name with Arnold's name and his voice with Rimmer's voice.
With Rimmer's voice, because, yeah.
So that Rimmer will genuinely believe when he wakes up and these memories are in his head, he will genuinely believe they were his own.
And he does. He buys it lock, stock, and barrel, to quote what Jonathan was saying earlier, lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. My taste in music radically changed. I stopped adoring Montevanti and got into Rostabilly Skank. Crazy.
And he dropped out of college and just bummed around and was a slob and spent 8 months with Lisa Yates, and it was the best 8 months of his life.
You told her you wanted to play the field.
Yeah, that's where things get confusing because apparently Lister was a complete smeghead when he was with Lisa Yates, and he didn't edit that part out. He was trying to explain Rimmer's own memories to him.
Well, kind of, but Lister was a lot younger, I would think, at the time, too.
Well, that's true. He was probably immature and irresponsible and all those sort of things. But
That's kind of like Lister says as much. He said you were young, you didn't want to settle down, you wanted to bum around and have a laugh. But I hate bumming around and having a laugh. But that's what you do when you're young, man.
Not Rimmer.
Well,
He definitely didn't.
Rimmer's, I wanted to have a career. Ah, good old Rimmer. But he buys it. He thinks this is an actual legit memory of his, and he doesn't catch on right away that Lister had any part in this.
Mm-hmm. Even when Lister is trying to tell him about the sex, like fantastic sex, mind-blowing sex,
man.
How would you know? I'm just having a guess,
man.
And then things get even weirder still because Rimmer finds the letters that Lisa Yates wrote to him, and he's pissed. He's like, this woman was unbelievable. She was going out with you at the same time she was going out with me.
Yeah,
she even went to the same places.
On the same day at the same hotel where she made love to me 6 times, she made love to you 6 times. 12 times in a night. What's wrong with the woman? Is she sex mad? It's a good job you were there. If I'd been on my own, I'd been dead within a week.
It's not what you think, Rimmer.
What do you mean? I've checked the dates. They all check out.
And this is where he finally has to...
At all, Rimmer. You never even met her.
Yeah, he has to confess that he gave him 8 months of his memories. He finally has to fess up to the whole thing.
He tells him it was a present, that, his intentions were good, and suddenly the light bulb goes on in Rimmer's head. He goes, that's why I was an orphan, even though my parents were alive.
That's why I had my appendix out twice.
And I'll have it out a 3rd time. But he's just really tragically heartbroken, and he doesn't want to have these feelings that were never really his in the first place. This is kind of where I can kind of sympathize with Rimmer, because he's having these just emotionally distraught feelings that weren't even his in the first place.
Mm-hmm. That's why, Jonathan, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, or Jason, you can, but either one of you, it's like, why would he give him those memories and then not edit out the parts where he fucked it up so badly?
I guess he would have to do a lot of editing or Rimmer would just kind of wonder what happened and kind of fill in the blanks, and it would just get really weird.
I don't know. Jonathan, what do you think?
I think he should have, but, Lister's a bit, with all good intentions, sometimes Lister's intent doesn't always go through the completion process.
I think he did it right giving the complete thing, because I think it would have driven Rimmer even more mad if he had given an incomplete record of Lisa Yates, because then Rimmer would have been left to fill in the blanks on his own, and who knows what that demented mind would have filled in.
Yeah, that's true. But it just seems like every time, something happened, it's like we saw in the previous episode, like Rimmer's head will not allow him to be happy. So something would have just totally bollocksed it up in some form or another.
This is true. Yeah. So they ultimately make the decision that he can't live with these memories that aren't even his, and he wants them erased. And he doesn't just want them erased, he wants everybody else to erase their memories of him having these memories. He wants to erase everything. So
yes, the technology then we know exists to have a Homo sapiens brain selectively memory erased, a Felis sapiens brain have selective memories erased, and the computer core's memory selectively erased along with the holograms. The only problem is the black box will still have a recording of it. And they were like, well, we'll just destroy it. It's indestructible. You can't destroy it. We'll just shoot it off into space somewhere. Well, what if somebody finds it? Okay, fine. We'll bury it on that planet we were on a few days ago. And that's how you get the giant footprint in the moon dust. They're carrying because Kat and Lister are carrying the gravestone that says to the memory of Lisa Yates, and it's heavy, and they end up dropping it. It leaves a footprint in the dust on the planet, but it also breaks both of their feet when it lands on their feet. And then they finally get back to the ship, and after burying it and
I think Rimmer tries to have a bit of a ceremony, but then it goes back, and I think after they did that, I think the black box ends on that.
Yeah, the black box ends on Lister putting the last piece in the jigsaw puzzle, and then it fades
Well, Lister
out to
first rips the pages out of his diary, so no one will know what happens, and then he puts the last piece in the jigsaw puzzle to complete it, and we fade into the credits.
Yeah, they're like, okay, let's go get our... And I will say this, yeah, it might be, in a way, it was sort of a weaker episode, but it was one of those episodes where, like, damn it, you're making me feel sorry for Rimmer.
I thought it was good character development. If it's not the greatest episode, at least it establishes more of who these people are.
As I said, the way the narrative was set up to me was a lot more entertaining than the actual narrative itself. Like finding out what happened at the end was kind of like the suspense, the structure of the suspense was more interesting to me than the actual suspense.
But we get to see that Lister does kind of, despite all his protestations and stuff, does kind of care about Rimmer, you know. He is a decent bloke, and maybe that's why Lister is, you know, the best one of the bunch.
And that's kind of a recurring theme with Lister, that he does care about Rimmer, where the reciprocal is certainly not true.
True. And
Rimmer could give a smeg about Lister. You know, Rimmer would throw Lister under the bus if it would advance his career in the slightest, or if it meant his survival. But
he would definitely throw Cat under the bus 5 times if it meant that.
But yeah, you know, Lister is all boys from the door, all in trouble, one in trouble, all in trouble.
And Rimmer's like, the hell with that. Yeah, it was a good episode, and I mean, yeah, it may not have been up to the usual lengths of insanity that we've been seeing on the show, but it was good. I mean, again, showing that they're starting to branch out and show other scenes outside of the ship, and I'm like, yep, they're starting to realize now that they got somewhat of a budget, they can start doing things.
And if nothing else, this episode gave us the immortal combination of a triple-decker fried egg, chili sauce, and chutney sandwich. We have to thank them for that.
Yeah, the chutney, I may have to replace that part of the sandwich with something else, but that, otherwise, I'm like, I looked at my son when I was watching it earlier today, I said, might have to try that sandwich, but I'm going to have to make sure we have all the protections in place to keep the integrity of the household safe.
Yeah, put on your hazmat suits first.
And because I've been talking a lot about wanting to eat more curry, you know, try all these other curries thanks to Lister. And I'm like, I'm going to have to make sure we reinforce everything before I do that. But yeah, it was a good episode. Now it does pale into what the next couple episodes we'll be getting into in the next couple of weeks. Especially my personal favorite of the episode of the season that is called Queeg.
Yes, Queeg is an all-time classic.
Which is probably, I would say, one of it's either 1 or 1A for best episode of season 2. It's either Queeg or Parallel Universe, but
I'm
gonna go with Queeg. I like Queeg better.
Yeah, Queeg to me was better, but we'll get into that and get into the.
I mean, it's, as I said, with season 2, it's really interesting. Queeg is one of those great episodes that's never referenced again. Parallel Universe, much like Stasis Leak, is where things happen, but then they're walked back and never mentioned again.
They're retconned.
Stasis Leak is going to be pretty fun to watch. I'm like, you find a thing where you can time travel back and quite potentially, possibly prevent something, and it doesn't happen. And then something else happens.
They pour the soap through and it comes back as powder. You can't take anything organic. You can't bring back anything organic. If you do, this is what happens to you. Who are you thinking about bringing back? Me. Let's do it.
Well, that's how Cat would think. He'd love to see Rimmer in pain. Of course. Can't always blame him. And then Cat is Cat.
Yeah, he doesn't really seem to like Rimmer. It's like he kind of tolerates Lister. He's like, oh, poor monkey, he's sick, but I'm going to eat my lunch because my lunch is more important, but I'm saying the monkey is sick.
Well, as the series develops, you know, you can tell that Lister and Cat become more buds, and Cat might actually care for him, but he never cares for Rimmer.
And the feeling is mutual.
Yeah, and I will say that I earlier in the week I broke down and watched the Red Dwarf, The Promised Land, because I knew it was so far out of the way that I'm like, I won't get spoiled by anything. And
good callback to Waiting for God.
And it was a nice throwback to the first season, and I was like, by God, I'm actually enjoying this. But yes, please, guys, don't take this the wrong way. Next Dwarf you do it as an animation, so that way we're not seeing y'all. I mean, and it's nothing against the guys. I mean, Father Time is not, pleasant to all.
You kind of jumped from all the way from season 5 to season 12, I think was.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't consider it a season. I just consider it a special. But
kind of like season 9, like Back to Earth was a special.
It was like, I went from the early 90s to now. And yeah, that has been that's
where if you have progressed through season 6 and 7 and the Abomination that is 8, and then Back to Earth, and then some of the newer ones, it may have been a more gradual aging process for you.
I think it's going to be funny though. When I get to 8, I'll probably be like going, "Why is everybody griping about this? This is actually good." It usually winds up that way. Things that we'll see. I have it where there have been things that I've watched that people have absolutely hated, and I'm like, where in the hell is the hate coming from? This is not bad. I mean, I could see where, like Torchwood.
I love Torchwood.
When they did
unapologetically every season of Torchwood they've done, no matter how much other people have hated it, I've always loved it.
Miracle Day,
I fucking loved it.
That is terrible, and I'm like, the only thing terrible about it is it has a very rough middle part. That if they had trimmed it down and made it like instead of the two episodes or so and made it one.
Mm-hmm. It was too long. I'll grant you that, but I still enjoyed it.
Oh, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I loved the whole deal, and I loved the entire series. I was just like, somebody thought I was smoking crack when I said that Miracle Day wasn't as bad as everybody said it was, whereas Children of Earth I thought was just a tad bit overrated.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just briefly expound upon season 8, and we're way, way, way far away from getting to it on this show, but let me just say this about it briefly. It's not good, but in the realm of not good things that I would still watch, it's way higher on the list than a lot of others. Like, because it's Red Dwarf, I will still watch it. Whereas other things that are not good, like Sliders season 5, fucking forget it.
Never watch bad as Sliders or Andromeda season 5. The way I would describe it, kind of as an outsider looking in, season 8 is kind of like a fever dream, but a fever dream from the point of view of Crichton.
It probably would make sense once I get there.
If Crichton had an entire series, an entire season that was nothing but a fever dream, it's season 8.
I think what was my favorite gag from Promised Land was that Rimmer kept trying to tell Crichton, forget everything. So Crichton kept memory erasing himself, and I'm like, it's like, Rimmer, did you ever learn from previous attempts at erasing shit that it never works?
You never learn, do you?
Yeah, just draw an H on your forehead the moment you say that.
I did.
I am looking forward to watching the rest of the series, and like I said, one day on BritBox, I decided to go ahead, and I was like, what the hell? It's far enough ahead, and it's not part of the series proper. It was more like they did a special to give people something new and kind of, and I was like, started watching it, and I was like, I'm enjoying this, but oh God, people, you guys need to do an animated series after this.
See, I don't even mind that they aged. It's like, you know what? They aged far more gracefully than I have, so.
Aging doesn't mind, I don't mind that as much as I mind the more expensive sets with more modern computers. It kind of loses that old school charm that it used to have with just pieces of broken computer circuitry.
They can only keep
things the walls of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
They can only keep things looking so, relatively old without inadvertently updating. I mean, if you look at, like, say, Next Generation or, some of the stuff from then, and you look at it and you're like, yeah.
Oh, a better example would be Enterprise, where they kind of had, their hand was kind of forced that, well, we can't make it look like the original series, but we can't exactly make it look as good as, Voyager or Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, and even being an old ship, it still would look better just because of more modern, technology. But it's just how it is. I mean, the fact that how they bring back Holly in Promised Land was hilarious. I'll leave it at that, so it's not spoiling it for down, later on down when we do actually.
Yeah, because you're right at the meat and potatoes of the series now. You're in season 5, Jonathan?
Yes, I am. I'm in season 5. I just finished watching Quarantine, and oh my God, that's probably in my top 5 favorite episodes right now.
Mr. Flibble is very cross.
Twinkle, twinkle, little eye. Now it's time for
you
to
to die.
Mr. Flibble, what should we do? What should we do with them? Oh,
we can't do that.
Mr.
Who
Flibble?
would clean up the mess?
And now I want to get a Mr. Flibble doll. And I know they are expensive if you find them on eBay.
Oh yeah.
Season 3 all the way through the end of season 7 is really solid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I told, and my kids were hoping that season 5 had one of their favorite quotes. It's like, "You raised a red alert. Are you sure, sir? That does mean changing the light bulb." And
does mean changing the bulb.
Because my son finally sat down and watched when I was watching Polymorph, and he caught the scene with Alpha Betty Spaghetti. He's like, "Finally, I get to see the proper
spaghetti."
I
honestly thought my false teeth were going to fall out.
That is one of my favorite things. Just to see Chris Berry wearing looking like a hipster with, give
Keisha a chance.
God. But
if I ever cosplay for a Red Dwarf convention, I'm definitely wearing a Give Keisha a Chance t-shirt.
I'd have to figure out a way to cosplay as Crichton without it taking too much, but no, I can't do the human version because then I'd have to have a double Polaroid. And
I'd probably go as the Inquisitor just for the hell of it.
Oh, that is one thing about Promised Land. I know it was makeup, but boy, did Danny John Jules did not look like he aged much. And that might have been the cat makeup helping him, but I'd like to think, boy, brother ages well.
Black don't crack.
Yep, you beat me to it.
It's the dancing that keeps him young.
Uh-huh.
Well, anyway, gentlemen, why don't we do some cheap plugs?
I saw one of the greatest quotes that I have ever seen about pro wrestling over the weekend. And this quote on Facebook said, "Leo Rush is the Antonio Brown of pro wrestling." So kudos to whoever said that, because that was spot on.
I don't know. I think Antonio Brown is even less stable than Leo Rush. I think Leo Rush is a calm, placid lake by comparison.
I think in the arena of their given fields, they are both good at what they do, but outside of that, boy, are they batshit.
I think Antonio Brown is way more of a prima donna than Leo Rush.
I worry about CT. I really hope Antonio Brown goes to see a neurologist, because I think there is some straight up head trauma, literally, that he's dealing with.
I have to imagine that some of his issues are indeed concussion related, because nobody should act the way he acts and not be suffering from something.
Yeah, that's my thinking exactly. And I've been watching Warehouse 13 lately. Great show. Beg, borrow, steal that however you can. Get it on DVD, torrent it like I did, whatever. And as I was watching it, I noticed that Claudia's text tone was from 1978's Battlestar Galactica, the Cylon saying, "By your command." So definitely check out the original 1978 Battlestar Galactica. And if you like shit that's so bad it's good, check out Galactica 1982 if you want to see a show really jump the fucking shark.
Oh, no.
Man, Jack.
No.
That was the Return of Starbuck. That is the only thing that
You know
Oh,
what?
definitely watch the one with Wolfman Jack in it, the
Oh
Halloween
God.
episode.
You
That one is
you
great.
just set the bar lower than season 5 of Sliders. I now have something I would rather watch, and it's Sliders.
Even as
I think I would rather watch Galactic in 1980 than season 5 of Sliders.
even as an
No, for me it's
eight-year-old.
the other way around, I guarantee.
Oh
And
God.
I also discovered on YouTube today a channel, a guy goes by the name of Bobby Broccoli, all is one word, but I watched an interesting 3-part episode on a man named Jan Hendrik Schoen, who got his PhD revoked and was close to winning a Nobel Prize, but didn't because it was all fabricated and fictitious because he had fudged his research. So that was fun. And since Jonathan mentioned Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, there's a movie called Tokyo Raiders, which is kind of like a kung fu version of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. So definitely check out Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, but also check out Tokyo Raiders.
I'm going to recommend a channel called Ordinary Things, which is anything but ordinary because he does these incredible dissertations and provides examples and does the research on the hideous, evil, and nefarious things that corporations and people have done. Like, if you ever want to see one that'll really open your eyes, watch the Ordinary Things episode about Nestle, where he basically sums it up this way, and you should still watch it, but this is his summation. Nestle takes away things that people need and then packages them and sells them back. I can't do any more justice to it than that, but watch the whole episode. It's great. Jonathan, what do you want to plug?
Let's see. I would since I mentioned it before, I highly recommend Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Don't send me any hate email when you say something about a big 12-inch whatever. It's a fun watch. I've really haven't been on a kick of anything other than I'm trying to sit down and reread Red Dwarf Welcome's Careful Drivers. And I recommend it as a good read if you want to see an alternate variation of what happens to the boys from the Dwarf. Also, as usual, support your local comic book store and game stores when you can. Also, I've watched too much shit on YouTube that I can't really go with one any channel. I've also been watching a lot of weird shit on TikTok, and if I could remember the one guy that did some of the funnier shit that I've seen, I think his name was the Manny or the Manny Show or something. I'd say look him up on TikTok. The guy is nuts. Every time I think he's actually gone back to being sane. He does something completely whacked out. Other than that, I'm going to be going on a Fast and Furious kick and try to finish up watching Fast and Furious 8 and 9 and then go back and rewatch Hobbs and Shaw, which I highly recommend Hobbs and Shaw just for the interplay between Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham. And you get to see the current WWE or the current Universal Champion briefly in there as well. So there you go. All I can say.
All right. That's Red Dwarf AMP, and we will see you all again in 7 days.